Hello, and welcome to another episode of Africa's Critical Thinkers. On this episode, Wandisa talks about how she started her business, Just Shea Butter, and shares some of the lessons she has learned.
My name is Wandisa Nkosi, and I am a 30-year-old South African woman, born and bred, I would say, in KZN mostly. Schooling happened mostly in Newcastle, which is my hometown, and Pietermaritzburg for high school, and then UCT Cape Town for varsity, and then I worked in Johannesburg. So I've kind of been around, did some, overseas studies as well, like 3 or 4 years ago. So I'm not afraid to move around. Yeah, so a little bit more about me. I run a business, or I run a few businesses. I guess that's why I'm on here. Run a few businesses. Right now I'm focused on two, which the first is called Reoccupy, which is a property development advisory consulting situation. We're still defining ourselves. And the other is Just Shea Butter, which is an online wholesale and retail shea butter distribution business. So yeah, I
That's
think
interesting.
that's me. I grew up in a pretty big family, I would say. Sorry, I'm cutting you off here.
No?
Um, yeah, a pretty big family. I grew up in and around retail, which I had to think about. I didn't think I was. You know, when it's your life, you just don't think you working, but
Yeah.
I've been working for, I don't know, maybe 10 years old, whatever age you are
That's
when you
called
can,
child slave labor.
it's called family business. So my parents, we have a bottle store and butchery slash shisanyama, the classic combination that makes things work. So I've been working there my whole life. And yeah, just been in different retail jobs as well. And then more professionally, my focus has been on property finance and property development.
So, do you think seeing your family run a business kind of influenced you to maybe go off on your own, or were you just tired of corporate and it just wasn't your thing and you
I think both. I think it's actually a problem. I think being raised by people that run their own businesses can't help but have an impact on you. You think of success differently. You grow up seeing, yes, the hard work, the labor, but also the flexibility. So my attitude around work has always been around hard work, sacrifice, no job too big or too small. But then there's always you got to enjoy the fruits of your labor. So thankfully, my family was in this business when that business was still very profitable. So I lived a very privileged life, I would say, but not without, I mean, I never had a New Year's. I never had, I was working every single December, Easter holidays. That's just kind of how it went.
Yeah.
So to go into corporate was, yeah, I think initially I didn't think it would be a challenge until I realized that it wasn't really the right fit for me. And it's just, yeah, it wasn't going to work. But it was definitely a necessary step, because that's where you learn. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm happy I did that. Don't regret it at all.
So maybe tell us a little bit more about your one of your business, or both of them really. Just Shea Butter. I guess that's a very interesting business because it's
That one is quite interesting. It kind of happened by accident. Yeah, it's very, very strange. It kind of just happened to me. I didn't think I was going to be in the shea butter space. So the history behind that was when I went overseas, or actually no, before that, I decided to go natural. So I had relaxed hair. I decided to grow out my afro well before it was popular to do so.
well before
So
people awoke to do so.
yeah, before the trend happened, I was like, I remember people telling me not to cut my hair, like actively telling me, don't do it, don't do it. Um, but I wanted to do it, and a lot of people were using shea butter. This is a lot of like Americans who I used to watch on YouTube were using shea butter. And so whenever I'd go on a overseas trip, it sounds like I do a lot. I don't. But I would buy my shea butter in London. If I was in London at the time, I would just stock up and it would last me like 2 years. So it was fine. And so, yeah, my afro was thriving. That was wonderful. I went to do my master's in the UK. I came back and all of South Africa, everyone had an afro. It was just, I missed it. I was so confused. Everybody had an afro and they couldn't believe that my hair was so long in comparison to theirs, because they all kind of started around the same time and I had a bit of a head start. So that low key made me an authority on, like, you know, afro hair care and whatnot. And shea butter is what I was using. So I would get it locally. I would get it from different vendors who were getting it in Randburg, and other parts of the country. But I would be getting it locally, reselling it, repackaging it, and selling it to my few customers. And then it got to the point where I thought, you know what, actually, I want to take this seriously. And if I want to do that, it's important that I know where the product comes from. I need to be sourcing it directly from Ghana. I need to give my clients comfort, you know, because when you're reselling, you don't know how old your product is. And I was getting a lot of inconsistency with the product. So I decided, no, I need to get it straight from the source, which meant that I'd have to put some real money down and actually do what was necessary to build, almost officially build the business.
Yeah.
So that's what happened. Yeah.
And
All while I was working.
oh, okay. Well, I guess that's how most good businesses start. They start off as a side hustle, or rather in this day,
Side hustles like everything.
yeah, they start off as a side hustle, and then you kind of take it seriously. And how long have you been running the business for? When did it start?
It's probably just over 2 years now. Yeah, just over 2 years, not long. Probably formally 18 months from getting it from Ghana. And then I left my job in October of last year. So it's about 6 months of me leaving my job, where I decided to actually fully focus on my personal businesses and give more time to Just Shea Butter and Reoccupy.
Yeah.
So yeah, full time. I've been doing it for about 6 months. Full
So,
time.
I mean, 6 months in entrepreneurship is a lifetime of lessons. It's probably 6 months is like 10 years in lessons. So what are some of the things that you have learned, especially now that you're full time? What are some of the things you've picked up from starting a business? You know, what were the challenges that you faced, and especially because you are essentially importing. You're importing a raw material, you importing products. So I'm
Yeah.
sure from a compliance perspective, it looks very different to, what a typical business in South Africa looks like. You know, if you're selling pens, it would be different because they mostly manufactured here. So what are some of those challenges that you faced?
I think when I started, what I realized was what I thought would be difficult was easy, and what I thought would be easy was difficult. So getting an import license, connecting with suppliers in Ghana, initially that sounds really intimidating and daunting, but that was probably the easiest part once I had a plan in place. And, you know, just going to SARS and using all those resources that are free of charge and getting my paperwork in order. So that was not too difficult. The marketing side of things, you know, think social media, it's easy, everyone can do it. It's not. It's very, very difficult. So that's probably my biggest struggle or my challenge. The product speaks for itself. I have no problems with that, so I'm happy. So yeah, I think the biggest lesson, I think my approach was not to look at the big picture too much and just kind of take it one step at a time, and just make the next kind of, what's the next right decision, or how do I improve? I basically hacked my way through business and entrepreneurship, DIY'd my way through it, learned how to build my own website, learned how to, you know, everything I just learned by myself, which obviously takes longer, but it cuts all the costs because I didn't have the money to put in those areas.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm just trying to think now. Because yeah, I don't know. Just keep doing the right. Take it one step at a time. Take it one step at a time, and try not to be too intimidated by the process. And then knowing to take it seriously, knowing to go all in. I think the good thing that I did was I tested the market in a safer space, where I was, buying it locally, repackaging, and then when I decided to go all in, I was a lot more confident in that.
Yeah.
And also just being flexible in my business model as well. Initially, I was only doing retail. That was the plan, to only do retail. And I found that there's a lot of small businesses who are in the shea butter space, but they'll add their essential oils and different carrier oils and make it fancy and beautiful. And so they needed a local supplier who could deliver within the week. So I became that person for them. So just adapting my business model. But literally, there was a point where I would decant small little jars of shea butter into bigger wholesale containers, just because I didn't really plan for that.
Yeah.
So the third time around, it's a lot simpler because I know how much is wholesale, how much is retail. But you learn as you go, and you make mistakes. And thankfully, I took advantage of the fact that I am flexible enough to fail. Not having children, not having to worry about sending money home, only looking after myself. Those are huge assets, and it gives me flexibility. So I'm not afraid to kind of make mistakes, be broke for a season, and then come back.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been my thinking throughout this whole process. Not
Um,
sure if that answered your question, but
no,
hey.
it's your answer. So, there's no right or wrong answer when it comes to these
I
questions.
like that. Yeah.
Everyone's journey is different in entrepreneurship. People say different things. I would think, from what you said, I would think the SARS process, for example, would have been extremely difficult. But,
No,
yeah. So
it
I'm very
was
surprised. I'm very surprised.
so it's as difficult as registering a company. If you haven't done it,
Yeah.
the words around it seem so intimidating. It's 125 rand. It's not that deep.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But I see a lot of companies who sell that service who will help you register a company for 6,500 rand.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
And
It's
but you pay for what you don't know. So like the internet is your friend. I always tell people, just research. You can do it yourself. And SaaS is really, really helpful. I didn't pay to get my import-export license.
yeah.
It
Okay.
was pretty simple. But I will tell you one thing. Ever since I dedicated more time to the business, I was able to explore other avenues and get assistance from different government bodies. So, for example, I've been engaging with the Agri-Business Development Agency, who are focused on like agri-processing businesses like myself. And just in applying for different, tenders or applications for different programs, I've been forced to comply. So where I was a bit of a cowboy in the beginning, maybe when you have to, apply officially with these bodies, they have like, obviously the tender document, you have to get your paperwork in order. I had to get my products tested for the first time in a lab. And I always say, even if you don't get the tender or you don't get the project or you don't get the funding, it's so important to run through the process because it just cleans your house up. It
Yeah.
makes sure that you've got your financial statements, you've run a proper model, you've got a proper case, and you're compliant. So
Yeah.
that the next time something does come along, you're ready. But if you don't go through that process, you can sit in this weird space of just being a small informal business.
Yeah. Well, it's a side
I,
hustle if you don't go through that process. Then it just stays
yeah,
as opposed to a business.
yeah. And my biggest thing was I don't want to be a shea butter tuck shop online. Like it's got to be a little bit more. It's got to be a plan.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that's that.
So, since obviously this platform is, I speak to Africa's critical thinkers, and you just so happen
That's the biggest joke. What am I doing here?
And you obviously fortunate enough to deal with suppliers in Ghana, you know, and you've obviously
Yeah.
traveled. You've traveled not just Africa, but you've traveled the world really.
Yeah.
Um, in your experience, what do you think, um, or what do you think are the differences or the similarities in the markets in Ghana and the markets in South Africa, and just in general, obviously, because you know maybe you don't know all the markets, but just in general and how they conduct business compared to how we conduct business in South Africa.
Yeah, so I can only speak from my experience and how I've engaged with different suppliers in Ghana. And what I will say was shocking to me was a bit of an adjustment was how informal they are about doing business. So where I am more of an email, very formal in my language, very direct, they don't mind doing business over WhatsApp voice calls, and that makes me very uncomfortable because I'm just like, no, I want to be able to track our conversation. We are, as per our last conversation, we are those people. So we're very formal in the way that we do business. And initially, I had to just bend a little bit to start the relationship. But at some point, I was like, no, listen, this is how I want to conduct business with you. So I'm not going to respond to the WhatsApps. Let's have everything be on email, just to protect him and myself and all parties involved. So that was definitely a frustration, but one that I had to get over very quickly. Otherwise, you just don't engage. You need to kind of be flexible.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, look, I try to limit my risk to a degree by making sure that the shipping company was also was based in South Africa and had an office in Ghana to give me some control. And I made use of, bodies like the Global Shea Alliance to help me out as well. But otherwise, yeah, that's probably the biggest difference, the informality in terms of how we do business. But once we get that out the way, everyone performs as they should, and I haven't had any problems.
Yeah. So I asked this question because the African continent has a lot to offer when it comes to raw materials, and I won't even get into like the deep stuff, like actual like stuff that's mined, like gold, platinum, or diamonds. But a lot of in my experience, what I found is businesses that are maybe similar to yours, not in the shea butter space, but in the beauty space or in the cosmetic space or whatever it is, are importing a lot of the stuff from China, right? And I mean, when you look at maybe where China gets their stuff from, the actual raw materials or the inputs, most of them could actually come from the African continent. So you almost a middleman, because it's like that fear of the unknown. Some people just don't. They're just like, oh, Ghana, I don't know. I don't even know where it is really on a map exactly. So I don't want to do business. I want to go through the Chinese.
Yeah, that's quite sad, actually, is that we have a general mistrust of our own people on our own continent. And that just comes from being uninformed. I think if you're careful about how you do business and you do your homework, there's always going to be risk. I don't care if it's Chinese, Ghanaian, American, you always use your money. But it's just you need to put your feet in the water and you'll realize it's not as scary, I mean, for me, there was no way I had to get from Ghana. Did I pick Ghana over Nigeria? Maybe I had a little bit of anxiety. Maybe I had a little bit of anxiety over Nigeria, and that's based on I used to work in the bank, and there was just so many scary stories about, bankers going to Nigeria and all those good things. So I did feel a level of comfort. I know Ghanaians anyway, so I did feel comfortable with Ghana. And I do, I guess, know a little bit more about Ghana than any other country, but I think you've got to just start the conversation, get involved, do your research, and not discount people or a whole like population
Yeah.
based on just what you think you know. And we need to travel more. I think, I think that's the beauty of traveling. You realize how we don't know much about each other. I will go to Europe as a South African and just meet people who are completely like uninformed. And that we have, it's just, yeah, and that's I think how South Africans are as well about the rest of the continent. Because as a group of people, we probably travel the least on the continent. So I mean, I haven't even traveled. I was supposed to go to Ghana this year, and then COVID had other plans. So, but just in terms of like moving in and around our own continent and meeting the people, and engaging with Ghanaians in South Africa or other people from different countries in South Africa, it makes you feel a lot more comfortable. But yeah.
And if you could build, or what does your ideal Africa look like? If you could change anything or build anything, what would you do, and what would it look like?
Oh, that's a big question. Do you ask us in every interview? I should have gone and like done my homework. No, I just think it's where we see each other as Africans first and not our specific countries. I think borders are a problem in that way. I think we just need to, I want to be able to be fluid and move across borders and feel like I'm at home. I want to know more about what connects us and what separates us, and be able to see another African person as an ally, and as a point of strength and a resource, and someone to learn from. As someone who's been, like, the majority of my life, it's a constant battle in my mind. I've always had my leaders and my teachers and people of influence over me being European people, and that they've always had a place of authority. So I really wish I went to school with a Black maths teacher and a Black science teacher, just to kind of, for me to value African intelligence and African perspective. I think that's what we're lacking. So I think, knowing more about what kind of, where we link up, where we connect, how we're the same, that and not feel like a stranger in another country. I don't want to go to Mali and just feel like a stranger. I don't want to go to Malawi, Zim, and feel like a stranger. I want to feel welcome. And I also, oh my gosh, South Africans, we have this problem. I want other people from different African countries to come to South Africa and feel like they're at home. I think for me that would be ideal. And we're doing business with each other. And we, sometimes being African is a challenge because you have to, it's constant learning. I think the Europeans have it down, but for us, we've obviously had a lot of different challenges, and where we have been divided and colonized and all of that. So I just want to, build bridges, and for us to look inwards to solve our own problems.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
I mean, I guess the one of the difficulties, something that you touched on is, or you kind of touched on, is communication, right? If we cannot communicate, that already it's over. Like, and in South Africa, I mean, you look at, we have 11 languages just here in South Africa. Then if you go to Nigeria, you're talking probably over 200 different languages. You don't even need to go that far. You go to Zim, then it's Shona. Then you go to Zambia, it's Chichewa, and Malawi. It's like, it's very difficult. Where Europe, maybe it's a lot easier because they've got like core languages. They're like, we speak English, we speak Russian, or we speak we speak whatever language, or German, or whatever it is. So it becomes a little bit easier to conduct business. For example, if you look at maybe East Africa, right? East Africa is predominantly Swahili. They predominantly speak Kiswahili. So you might find that the trade between those countries is a lot stronger than maybe the trade in Southern Africa with the SADC region. Oh, and I mean
Mm.
the trade between the people, not necessarily between the governments, between the actual people and the movement of people. You know, I think language does play a big part in actually opening up those kind of markets.
No, I think you're right. But I think you also find that a lot of African languages, if we open our minds to it, we could be learning them a lot. They're not as difficult as we might think. Sometimes if you speak one African language, it might have a base, similar base. Like if you're speaking like, I don't know, Chichewa, and isiZulu, maybe there are commonalities in the two, you know, and Shona, and, you know, obviously. So I think as South Africans, maybe we need to also just unlock our minds, and you'll be surprised at how much access you'll have once you can speak the different languages. So maybe it won't be across the continent, but at least within, like you said, like your region, you might find some commonality in that. But
Yeah,
yeah, I know it does. It makes it crazy, crazy difficult.
yeah,
Um, but that in that way, I guess English does serve us
yeah.
in our
So
ability to communicate.
if if you had to give advice to a young person that's maybe going to that's currently in university or starting university that one day wants to run their business, you know, with regards to should they go into the formal employment space first before they, you know, start a business, or should they just go ahead and start a business? Like what
Oh,
experience, what would you?
I say go formal and have a side hustle. Are you kidding? You get to learn so much on somebody else's time and money by going the formal route. Absolutely. But don't delay. Start with your side hustle. Start small. You'll be surprised. I always say I have so much more respect for people who run tuck shops sometimes than people who run corporations.
Yeah,
Because they have to be, they are the true entrepreneur. Um, and sometimes it's that basic, you know, or it's that just, you have to be practical. So I definitely say start a business, any business. It doesn't have to be the big idea, but just understand the principles of cash flow, the principles of risk, understanding your client, all of those things. So your business fundamentals, and have a job. Because oftentimes, like it was in my case, that job will end up funding your business. And again, you get to learn a lot in an environment where people have made many mistakes before you, so you don't have to make the same mistakes.
yeah,
But I wouldn't advise just go, no. Because what happens is you will learn all the lessons, but you learn them the hard way, and they
yeah,
might be very expensive. And it also depends on what industry you're in. I guess it is a very industry specific question. But if you can get a job, do it. But absolutely start small. I think for me, the biggest thing has been, even now, starting has never been the problem. I mean, I called my company Just Shea Butter. I thought about it for 30 seconds. You know, I was like, oh, I need a company name, Shea Butter. Okay, then that's taken. Just Shea Butter. Okay, well, cool. That's it. Like I didn't think about what's a fancy, sexy name and marketing and what's palatable. I just kind of did it. But I knew it was a safe space to kind of just start and go. One thing I do battle with now, which is an active decision to get out of, is constantly trying to think bigger than what I've seen. So even though you are small, still planning to be a lot bigger. So, I mean, I was talking to friends of mine who just, I'm lucky that I have people who dream bigger for myself than I do and help me understand what's possible. But they were talking about, hey, listen, you know, what's going on with that farm and, you know, your shea butter in Ghana? Like, how do you know what I mean? Like, I'm thinking within South Africa and importing. They're like, no, you need to be processing, you need to bring everything down here. And then also it's led me to think about what other products are available for us in this country locally. I think, you know, shea butter or certain products are in certain regions, but that's not to say that in the rest of the continent, we don't have our own solutions.
yeah,
So that's that. But yeah, I think it's definitely start. Start something, make your mistakes, it's actually not that expensive to start these days. You can start online. It's incredible. With the apps and social media. I mean, I was invoicing and making orders and running a business while I was at my job. You know, yes, on the weekends I was busy packaging and doing all that stuff, but it's not as hard as you think.
Yeah.
So I'll definitely say start. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, definitely, if they get caught doing that at their jobs, they can say Wandisa said it's okay. And you mentioned from a dreaming big perspective, what is your vision for your company? Like, where do you see yourself playing in the next couple of years?
I think the plan has always been to be the number one shea butter producer in the country, and exporting to the rest of the continent and the rest of the world. That's always been the plan, to produce as much as possible locally, not only shea butter but other organic products, and yeah, just create jobs. I really want to create jobs for young people, create jobs for women, and build a solid and sustainable business. I think moving more towards the manufacturing side of things than the retail. So supporting all those smaller businesses who you would use shea butter and other butters that we produce as an input in their production cycle. So I think for me, I've realized more, like, being a retailer is great, but being in the manufacturing space, in the production space, is really where you want to be.
Yeah.
And I think Just Shea Butter is going to be one of many things that I get involved in. But I do want to build a sustainable business that will, outlive me.
Yeah, I think just to maybe provide more context, we probably should have done this in the beginning of this.
Ooh.
Shea butter. Maybe
yes. Oh, what is it?
Maybe you can explain what it is, because.
Right. Okay. So shea butter is it's a butter or fat that comes from the shea nut. Okay. And the shea trees, well, the ones I get it from are in Ghana, but you get them in Mali, Nigeria, in just one specific region of the continent. It's used for everything in terms of like skincare. It's for hair care. You can use it if you have eczema. In Ghana they even cook with it. So it's like just a fat, a natural fat that seems to have a whole lot of great healing properties. A lot of your cosmetic products, like your body lotions, will have shea butter in it. Some people think about it as, well, you can actually think about it as like an alternative to cocoa butter. Then cocoa butter was like the darling for a while, and then shea butter is just like it's shea butter's time to shine.
Yeah.
So yeah, shea butter is definitely having its moment, but there are a whole lot of different types of butters out there. The way I think about it, if anything grows, it can be reduced to an oil, and anything that can be reduced to an oil can be reduced to a butter. So that's what shea butter is.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for the clarity, because I don't want maybe some of the guys thinking that it's like margarine type.
Listen, I had that in one of my first pop-up shops. They were like, "Okay, do I eat this?" And I'm like, you know what? It's a fair question. It's a fair question. It's funny. I'm in my space. I get people who come to me like, "Oh my goodness, I've been looking for this everywhere," and others who don't know what on earth it is. So there's still a lot of educating that we're doing in the shea butter kind of space. But yeah, it's basically an all-round natural, external butter. So it's good.
And where can people purchase your products?
They can buy it online. You see, I did a happy dance there. I'm so glad you're not going to have this video recorded. No, they can buy it online on our website, which is www.justsheabutter.co.za. And yeah, everything happens from the website. We're Just Shea Butter on Facebook, Just Shea Butter on Instagram, and yeah, that's basically it. But yeah, it's been great. The reception has been wonderful. As much as my marketing is not all the way there, it's been really encouraging to have people come back and continue to support those businesses, or to support my business.
Yeah. So anything that I should have asked you that I didn't ask you?
No, I think you did well. You did very well. No, I think that's it. I think it's I don't know. You know what I like about entrepreneurship. When I went into corporate, one thing I saw for the first time was retrenchment, and that scared me because we always think that that's the safe path. There's no safe path.
Yeah.
I mean, now with COVID, we definitely know there's no safe path. And I just think we all have the power to create something if we choose to. Not everyone is meant to be an entrepreneur, because it can be very challenging, it can be very lonely, it can require sacrifice that you don't. I mean, I was supposed to go to Bali with my friends last year. Yeah, that didn't happen because someone decided to quit a job. So, you know what I mean? Like, you make sacrifices, and not everyone wants to make those sacrifices. But I think it's not as difficult as people think. You can try on a smaller scale in a safe space and then grow. If you can get a partner, that's great. Because that's one thing I struggled with a lot, is just how lonely the entrepreneurship journey can be. It's tough mentally, I think. But yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunities, and there's something really gratifying about knowing that you created something and that you can look after yourself and potentially look after others.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, that's pretty much it. But yeah, it's not for everyone. I know entrepreneurship is quite sexy now. Everyone wants you feel like you've made it because you registered a company and you're a named director. Playing yourself. It's a lot of work, but it's definitely worth it. And one thing I think is very important, sorry, I'm just going off now, is as an entrepreneur, sometimes you feel like you're always chasing, and whether you're chasing growth, chasing revenue, brand awareness, whatever it is, you're always chasing a certain goal. I think it's important to also enjoy the process. As difficult as it is, you have to enjoy the process, even because it's a process of sacrifice. Because you don't want to work and then, like, I don't want to ever feel like I gave it too much and I didn't enjoy my life. You know what I mean? I don't want to die like 35 or 40 and be like, I was just chasing and didn't enjoy my life. So yes, you must sacrifice, but it's important to enjoy the process as well.
Thank you for listening. I hope the conversation inspired you to find African solutions to African problems. I am Kagiso Tlogwatla, aka African Investor, and you have just listened to one of Africa's critical thinkers.